This week in Beyond the Headlines, amended Customs Duty Act to bring relief to consumers.
Madam Speaker, for years, members of the business community have been saying to government that, especially from the U.S. mainland, is one of the main factors why they are not as competitive as they should be, as they could be, particularly with their neighbors across in the U.S. Virgin Islands. And they have recommended for several years that the duty on freight and insurance be lifted. Madam Speaker, we have looked at it and decided this time that this be done.
As a part of their first 100 days in office, government announced one of several incentives that it said would help to stimulate the economy. The incentive was designed particularly to answer the call made by businesses to lower the cost of shipping on goods into the territory, a move that many business owners hoped would help them to compete with overseas businesses that do not have to pay the extra cost to import their goods. Currently, many residents believe it is cheaper for them to shop in the USVI, as prices of various items can be found at cheaper prices in places like St. Thomas. The government is aware of the fact that the USVI does not pay as much for the cost of shipping for many of their products as they come from within the US, and they do not pay custom duty as their items mainly travel from one US port to another. The BVI, on the other hand, has had to pay duty on the cost of freight, shipping and insurance, which adds to the sales price of its products. During a press conference held on February 2nd, Premier and Minister for Finance, Dr. The Honorable D. Orlando Smith, announced government's decision to do away with duty on shipping and insurance by only charging for the cost of item and not duty on freight and insurance, which is the current practice. According to the Premier, the move would ensure that the private sector becomes the main driver in the economy.
With effect from the 1st of February 2012, that is today, the policy of government with respect to goods being imported into the territory is that duty will be levied on freight on port costs and not on cost, insurance and freight, as is the current practice. I spoke about this in my budget address, and my press conference this afternoon illustrates that with my government, a promise made is a promise kept. Ladies and gentlemen, the fundamentals of my government's approach to the economic recovery is that we minimize direct contributions into the economy by central government via transfers and direct participation, and instead provide an enabling environment so that the private sector, as a more efficient and responsive vehicle, can be the main driver for economic growth and development.
The new move was seen as one of several initiatives by the government to keep money within the territory. The finance minister said that more than $40 million leaves the territory each year, and he alluded to the new initiative as being one of the ways this money could stay within the territory.
People in this territory are subjected to very high prices, especially for food and household items, that cause them to experience hardships in meeting the needs of their families. These hardships have negatively impacted the quality of life that we are accustomed to in this territory, as more and more of our residents have difficulties with basic survival. I've heard the cries, ladies and gentlemen. I heard the complaints that prices fluctuate wildly on the supermarket shelves, and that we are spending more of our paychecks for food, clothing, and shelter. I know that is why an increasing number of you shop overseas and spend in excess of an estimated $40 million per year doing so. We need that money to stay in our economy, and we believe that if we were to become competitive in prices, a large portion of that money would indeed remain in the British Virgin Islands. If we keep that money in our economy, then our local businesses hire more, turn over their products faster, and yes, also pay more taxes. A win-win situation for everyone.
But the big question arising from the Premier's announcement was what changes residents could expect to see as a result of the amended act. During the sitting of the House of Assembly on February 14th, Premier Smith tabled the Customs Management Amendment Act and made a move for it to be seconded and passed in the House. There was much discussion during the debate stage of the bill, however, as members of the opposition argued against the initiative, stating that while they were in favor of saving residents money, the method to make such savings had to make sense, and in their estimate, the proposed bill did not. Arguing against the motion were Districts 1, 2 and 3 representatives, Honorables Andrew Foy, Roy, Alvin Christopher, and Julian Fraser, all of whom stated that the $3.7 million in revenue that government stood to lose annually was not worth what they said would only be a few cents saved in the consumer's pockets.
In a time when we strapped for revenue, Madam Speaker, losing 3 million and change, Madam Speaker, it is something that we have to study. It might not sound popular to those, Madam Speaker, who would say that we're going to disburse this 3 million and change among our people. But not so fast, Madam Speaker. When we look at it, Madam Speaker, I want to be able to help the Premier to tighten this so that we can make sure that it's more effective for the people, Madam Speaker, because I know that it is his aim, and there are a few things in the bill that I support and a few areas that, Madam Speaker, in order for the bill to be effective, that I would have to see in the bill. Madam Speaker, if we look at trailer costs, Madam Speaker, just picking a number out of the hat, Madam Speaker, if a trailer worth of goods is $5,000, Madam Speaker, and roughly we have business people in the house, Madam Speaker, and you bring the trailer across here, you really have a savings, Madam Speaker, or you pay roughly about $500, for example. Huh? Right, so $500 roughly for the $5,000. Madam Speaker, when I calculate it, if you do the right math, that's $500 or $5,000, Madam Speaker, that's 10-cent savings. If you do the wrong math and put $5,000 or $500, that's $10 savings. So, Madam Speaker, really and truly, when you check it, whether you do new math, old math, or Bars Hog math, the savings, Madam Speaker, is not great, it's not significant. Because if you have to take the 10-cent, Madam Speaker, and spread it over the $5,000 of goods by removing insurance, Madam Speaker, then the savings that you want to realize in the stores, Madam Speaker, if the can of milk was $1.10, the most you might get, Madam Speaker, if it reaches to the milk, is $1.09, Madam Speaker. Or you have to go into the 95th of a cent, Madam Speaker. Because when you calculate it, to let that savings spread over the goods, and we're using an example here of a $5,000 worth of goods in a trailer. So, Madam Speaker, that in itself, I understand when the members have said before that it does not realize into much savings right now. But, Madam Speaker, right now is what we're looking at.
I do agree with my colleague from the 1st District. The main problem of import is with the freight coming into the country. But whatever government can do, as it attempted to do in this instance, is welcome. And I support that, I applaud that. The problem that I am seeing, Madam Speaker, when the calculation is done based on, I believe the numbers have come, I hope they have, from the record that Custom has produced. The number been tossed around between 1.7 to $3.5 million that would be saved by the merchants. And Madam Speaker, I want to be abundantly clear on this matter, that this bill is only pertaining to the merchant, and I take that from what I read in the bill, and I know that the definition of that will be clearly set out when we go to the committee stage, who is entitled, what I see in there, person with valid trade license in order to sell and to do business within the territory. So, Madam Speaker, I do believe that in that context, that the import duty on this bill that we are now attempting to reduce our 2012 budget by and onward would mean just that. But the question still remains, Madam Speaker, if we're going to reduce in this tough economic time the revenues of this territory by some $3 million.
Madam Speaker, in a government where the budget, the revenues for the year 2012 is somewhere around $280 million, $87 million. And Madam Speaker, you're going to talk about stimulating the economy by sacrificing $3.7 million. That's the figure that's been touted around as to what this is going to cost the government in revenue. Madam Speaker, I find that to be a joke. I don't think it's meaningful enough. That's why I said, Madam Speaker, if you're going to do something, you must do it. The intent is a good one, to stimulate the economy, but it's meaningless. I don't see how, in God's name, Madam Speaker, the Deputy Premier, in seconding the motion and giving his contribution, said that in inverted commas, quote, hope that merchants will have will be ethical enough to pass those savings on to the customers. So I heard about flying planes on a wing and a prayer, Madam Speaker. Now I'm hearing about running a government on hope and the good ethical practices of behavior of the merchants. Where you don't give someone $3.7 million and hope that he does what you want him to do with it. There must be a plan in place, Madam Speaker, as to how this $3.7 million is going to get where you want it to go.
Speaking in defense of the bill, Minister for Communication and Works, Honorable Mark Vanterpool, spoke of the ease with which residents can move to other jurisdictions and shop, which he said results in money leaving the territory.
People can shop where they wish, shop how they want, at whatever time they want, at whatever prices they want to shop at whatever quality they want to shop at. That is good. That is, Madam Speaker, the freedom that we have in this world today. But Madam Speaker, if we sit here and don't do our best as a country to ensure that the money fleeing in all sorts of ways, Madam Speaker, fleeing out of this country by water contracts, fleeing out of this country through shopping in this way, fleeing out of this country, Madam Speaker, by hiring and bringing all kinds of people from all over the world to work here and take all our money out back to wherever. Madam Speaker, if we don't put a stop to that slide, this economy will have nothing to build on. Soon from now, you'll be asking the merchants to hire people, and where are they going to get the money to hire the people from if the money being spent overseas?
Also speaking in defense of the initiative was Minister for Education and Culture, Honorable Myron Walwyn, who spoke about the money leaving the BVI each year, specifically through persons opting to shop in the USVI rather than shopping locally. The minister said the new initiative to do away with the cost of shipping is one way government will keep money within the territory.
We also have a problem with financial hemorrhaging. There is too much money leaving the shores of the Virgin Islands. And you look around and you see it. Yes, you have contracts leaving, where you have services that could have been performed by our people in this country. Madam Speaker, we have money leaving because we have a large expatriate community who send remittances back home to take care of their family, and there's nothing wrong with that, because people need to make a better living and they move to make a better living. And you have other ways with money leaving the territory. One of it is that St. Thomas situation. It's a serious, serious situation. Millions and millions of dollars, Madam Speaker, leaving this local economy. Money generated in this territory, leaving before it has a time to circulate like it should. And so we have to find a way to stop that. And I'm pleased, Madam Speaker, that our Honorable Premier has decided to do this. And this is just one step, Madam Speaker, in a whole package that will come over the 4 years, Madam Speaker, to reduce the cost of living for people in this country.
After much debate, a vote of 8-3 was cast in favor of the Customs Management and Duties Amendment Bill. The question many are still asking is, what would the new initiative look like for the consumer? JTV did an analysis of the cost savings and compared it to what the process was before government made the amendment. Using a vehicle, if a resident were to purchase such a vehicle valued at $25,000, he would have been required under the old Customs Act to pay a 20% duty on the cost of the insurance paid to the shipping company, plus the cost of the freight. If the insurance costs $500 and the shipping costs $5,000, then the buyer would be required to pay 20% of the $25,000 car, plus the $500 insurance, plus the $5,000 shipping, which totals $31,000. The duty on freight, item, and insurance would then be 20% of $31,000, which is $6,200. Under the amended Act, however, persons no longer have to pay duty on insurance and shipping, but rather just 20% on the total cost of the item they import. Using the saved $25,000 car, the total one would now pay to import the vehicle would be 20% of the $25,000 cost, which is $5,000. And so under the new amended Customs Act, a savings of $1,200 is realized on that vehicle. But this example would vary based upon the item being imported. Simon Potter, Managing Director for Roadtown Wholesale, spoke with JTV News about the new act, stating that in his opinion it is a good idea, but he doesn't envision much savings being incurred as a result of the initiative, and neither should consumers.
Okay, well, the initiative the government is doing is a good initiative, but the cost to the savings to a lot of people will not be so significant, because what happens is that the initiative is giving you a savings on the duty paid on the freight. If you bring an item that is a large item and the freight is a small percentage of the cost of the item, your savings is going to be small because it's only a small percentage of a large item. Whereas if you bring something from China, for example, something that comes from China, the freight is a large part of the cost. The freight might be over 100% of the cost. And this type of item, you get a break on half of your dutiable item, because duty is paid, traditionally it used to be paid on cost, insurance, and freight, what you call CIF, cost, insurance, and freight. The new system will be on the FOB, free on board. So if you got to get savings on a freight, the freight must be a significant amount to see a good savings. So if you bring an item from far away, where the freight is a large portion of the cost, and you're paying duty on it previously, you can see a good savings. But if you bring items like we do as Roadtown Wholesale from United States, and you bring container loads, I mean the freight is only a small part of the total cost. We will bring a container costing $20,000, and the items in there, the freight on them might only be, well, tropical freight is high, it could be up to $4,000 to $5,000. If the freight is $5,000, that's 20% of the cost of the item. So when you save duty on pay less duty on the $5,000 compared to the whole cost, which is $25,000, we pay $20,000. So the savings in terms of duty, it's not so large, and most people won't really see the difference. But I can assure you, whatever savings is made will be passed on to the ultimate customer, because the system that we have, we find the landed cost, we apply a fixed markup irrespective, and that markup is based on to cover overheads and make a very small profit. So any duty paid reflects on the freight. So for most people, they'll see a very small savings.
Also speaking about the new act was Chairman for the BVI Chamber of Commerce and Hotel Association, Dr. Bernie Harrigan. Dr. Harrigan spoke about making the BVI business more competitive with their overseas counterparts and said that the BVI CCHA has advocated for the removal of taxes on imported goods for some time. And she said it was refreshing to know that their appeals did not fall on deaf ears.
The BVI CCHA has long advocated that duty be levied only on the free on board goods, that is the cost of goods, and not on insurance and freight, because it puts an onerous burden on the business community. You know, it raises the cost of business, and so those costs are passed on to the customers. And so we strongly advocated not levying customs duty on insurance and freight. And I am so pleased that this government has agreed with the position of the BVI CCHA, because we were supposed to meet with caucus And this was one of the items on the agenda because the cost of living is high here, comparatively speaking, although we've seen some reductions in the cost of living recently, especially the cost of food. And so we're very, very pleased with the fact that the government is favorably considering the BVI CCHA's position on this. And hopefully those savings will be passed on to the customers because, as you know, we sponsor an annual trade show by BVI to encourage people to invest in the territory, to invest in the place where they reside. And hopefully, with the cost of goods being reduced, people will tend to spend more here instead of going overseas.
During the press conference to announce the change in the customs duty, Premier Smith said the removal of the duty on cost of shipping and insurance would result in savings being passed on to consumers, a step that the Premier said would be reviewed by the National Business Bureau 2 years after the initiation of the act.
We expect that the savings to the local businesses will allow them to provide incentives and lower prices to the consumer. The $3.7 million in revenue foregone by the government of the Virgin Islands we consider as an incentive to local businesses that should accrue benefits very soon. In an effort to facilitate the success of this initiative, there will be joint supervision by the Ministry of Finance and the National Business Bureau, and the combined effects of its existence reviewed during and at the end of the next 24 months.
According to the Premier and Finance Minister, stimulating the economy and equipping local businesses to thrive is of paramount importance to this government. He, along with other members of his administration, said that if the businesses can be successful despite today's economy, government will work toward ensuring consumers stand to benefit in whatever ways they can from the savings passed on from the government to the business community through the new Customs Act. This is Walter Barrett, Beyond the Headlines.